I'm going to talk about Potawatomi independent order inverse marking, and I'm going to claim that it's a reflex of morphological movement. So what is inverse marking first? You see here the transitive animate paradigm, and you see that in constellations where you have a first or second person subject and a third person object, so I see him or you see him, and third person subject, third person obviative object, so he sees that guy that, by the way, also exists, you get this nice marker R that is always the same. In the reverse paradigm, when you have the reverse subject-object constellation, so he sees me, or that guy that, by the way, also exists, sees him, you get the same forms as in the direct paradigm, only that this one marker A is substituted by the marker UG. And you get this in the first and second person subject-object constellation as well, but not as consistently. But that's a side story. This kind of inverse marking has been analyzed in a number of approaches, which all differ as to which grammatical category the direct and inverse markers actually encode. They have been analyzed as portmanteau markers for case person transitivity, case person animacy or salience, case person reference set. They have been analyzed via major reference as a second order property, as case markers where you have to assume two different voice heads depending on which paradigm you have, as elsewhere markers in recent work by Oxford, and as a morphological reflex of modified syntactic node. You don't really have a consensus, and the question is whether the very recent framework of morphology and harmonic serialism can shed new light on that. Harmonic serialism is a lexical realizational pre-syntactic approach. So first morphology, then syntax. It's based on merge. So exponents are actually merged. And so you have rule-based morphology, then you can do it in OT, and people usually do it in parallel. And in harmonic serialism, you do optimality, you have an optimality theoretic approach, but you have multiple steps where you carry out one operation at one step, and that is subject to optimality theoretic derivation. The assumption is that there are two morphological cycles, each followed by a phonological cycle. The first morphological cycle is finished when all merge operations have been carried out, and the second morphological cycle is finished when all move operation or all residual constraints have been satisfied. So first you do your merge, then you do phonology, then you move, and then you do phonology. It's a bit like D structure and S structure and syntax. So some central properties are myopia and morphological movement, and the direct and inverse marking is a reflex of morphological movement, similar to resumption in syntax. The direct marker is a reflex of object movement. The inverse marker is a reflex of subject movement. You have independent evidence for morphological movement from Bantu languages. You have independent evidence for direct markers referring to object movement in paradigms of intransitive verbs that take underspecified objects. And you have evidence for the inverse marker referring to subject in underspecified agent constructions, where you see them reanalyzed with the same marker. So the idea is the exponents realizing the less salient argument on a salience hierarchy are merged first, then the exponents realize the more salient argument are merged, but the exponents realizing the less salient argument here in red want to be at the right. They were merged before, so when the arguments, the exponents realizing the more salient argument are merged, they aren't at the right anymore, so they have to move to the right, and they leave kind of a copy, and depending on whether the less salient argument is the subject or the object that moves, that copy takes the form of the direct marker or the inverse marker. Here you see a simplified step of movements in the form quap magnanek, they see us, where the less salient argument is the subject. If you have any questions, let me know. That's basically it.